Welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. I'm Joe Cook, got Justin Wells. We got Charlie Williams out on location doing a little bit of, I guess you could call it pre-draft prep. So doing a little bit of everything. He'll be checking out some high schools and he'll be back next week for recruiting intel. But we got you covered today. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, head to InsideTexas.com. And Justin, it's kind of a very interesting part of year where a lot of these players come in for Junior Day. Texas hosted theirs on at the very end of January, right after the season. And that's where coaches start to say, hey, when can we get you back? And a lot of players are already starting to say, yeah, I'll be back, and on this date.
Yeah, you wouldn't imagine that official visits would be scheduled basically 5 months in advance, but they are. And that's just how the new world of recruiting operates. And that's why Texas, and it looks like they're kind of following a trend for the most part. They want to make sure these big offensive linemen, especially these big tackles, they know Texas got to have them in June. They know Texas has to see them officially in June. And so, you got Xavier Crowell. I think that one's a little unique one because Javian Osborne, the other top running back target, he's already he's going to take an official to Texas, but he just doesn't have the date. Crowell already locked that thing down. And you noticed Alabama's getting the last one there. And I think that's very, very noteworthy with that recruitment. Then you got Crimpin, you got Ojo, and you got Wright. All offensive tackles, all big boys, all takes coming in on two separate weekends. That's big because, again, there's so many big tackles in this state. You need to just go ahead and lock those guys down as soon as possible. And then Katoa was one that we popped yesterday. He's a guy that's going to be coming in. He's probably your ideal interior guy, probably a guard, just the definition of a big human. I mean, just large and strong. And then Hezzy Kent, that's a new one that popped up earlier today. I believe he's an athlete out of Florida. That's another one that secured that. So we anticipate you're going to see probably in as much as 30, 40, even 50 different kids take official visits. And the fact that they're scheduling these things so far in advance just tells you where recruiting is right now. The Horns want to make sure they get those guys. And they did a little of this last year too. And then when we got closer to the actual visits, most of those guys came. Sometimes recruitments changed and were altered and kind of went into a different direction. But for the most part, this started last year about the same time. And this is just kind of the strategy I feel like Texas has. They take their time, and then they make sure they get the foundational guys in as soon as they can or get them back.
Let's talk a little bit about Hezzy Kent real quick because, when you talk about players like, and I'm going to go through them real quick. Crowell, we've covered him, very top target at running back. For Tashard choice, Zayden Crimpin, Felix Ojo, Max Wright, Toa Katoa, those are all priority offensive line recruits for Kyle Flood. All those guys would look in place in a class with Texas. But let's go ahead and let's talk about Hezzy Kent. I think it's short for Hezekiah, but we're going to go ahead.
We were wondering about that.
He is from Brunswick, Georgia. I'm not sure if that was within your travels to Georgia in recent months, but very unique. When you usually see an athlete, usually it's a guy who's about 5'11", 190 pounds, who plays both ways, is kind of a tweener, or he could be like Michael Terry and 6'3", 210. You don't see 6'6", 245 listed as an athlete very often. And our Eric Naleen over on the Inside Texas message board, he said, this guy's an offensive tackle. So I haven't watched much film of him, but this is a very interesting. But even though he could be an offensive tackle, he's got stats: 32 rushes for 211 yards, 8 touchdowns, 41 passes for 983 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I don't know. Maybe he's a jumbo tight end, but it's interesting to see Texas getting in on this guy, top 150 prospect by basically every service.
Yeah, it really is. And this one's unique, find the position. It's almost like finding Waldo. Like, you got to try to figure out and find the position here. I was actually thinking edge. I was thinking the guy could be something that comes across the edge, maybe winds up turning into a Lance Jackson type because he's on that track body wise. And so, listen, I think offensive tackle would be ideal for this guy. I think that would be news to him, though. I don't think he would be. You'd be surprised how many of these big time athletes. Keati Armstrong jumps off jumps on my mind out of Jasper. That kid would have been a 5-star offensive tackle last class. He decided to be a high 4-star tight end. And so Kent's going to be interesting to kind of see how, where he fits. But jumbo athlete in the most pure sense. He's just a big boy, and 6'6". If he's got skills on the offensive side, look at tight end. We've seen that position evolve. We've seen what Banks has been able to do with the last few in Austin. If he's got the hands and the ability, go with that. But that's the same argument we had with Lance Jackson. Was he going to stick at edge? He played tight end for 4 years. Would he be one of those? And it's one of those really cool, fun exercises. Pick the position. Just get the kid on campus first.
I might change the math. Eric wrote an article about Texas going and visiting him in person. Jeff Banks was out there. Maybe that says something about it.
Maybe
6'6", 265. So
okay,
that's a little bit different.
Yeah, okay. That's like 3 Big Macs and a trip to Stanley's. I'm telling you, offensive tackle probably is the spot.
Right.
But again, you got to run it by these kids. And sometimes it can help a relationship grow, or it can kill it quickly. Right. And they're usually pretty adamant about what they want to do. I still see a tight end or an edge. I'm still thinking in the edge mode. Now, you say 265, I'm damn sure thinking in the edge mode.
Yeah.
But if especially in a cycle like this, that there's so many offensive tackles already. And I'm not saying he couldn't do that. But again, that's the fun exercise about this. Find the spot, because this is a kid that you want another number 1 class. This is the type of kid you got to sign.
I wonder if you could really weaponize the Malik Ogbo position in recruiting this guy. Because there are not very many schools who have that sell. Like, look, we've done this. And granted, you never saw it in 2024. And, our guy David Keith Williams is on it too. There's only one Darnell Washington. Remember him? You're not going to see another.
Yeah, one. I remember him. He wasn't. Now that guy wasn't a human being, though. That was
I think everybody just thinks like, oh, he's big and you can do that. Like Darnell Washington could move at 270 in a way.
And he's barely playing in the NFL at that as well. Barely. Right.
But that's all to say, like, maybe there's a little bit of a sell like Malik Ogbo and be like, look, we did this. We put a guy who everybody thought was going to be an offensive tackle and gave him a receiver eligible number. And, by the way, he caught a pass in a playoff game, which always is going to be an interesting piece of trivia. So that's an interesting one. Looks like he will officially visit Florida, Miami, Texas, Florida State, and Alabama. That's Alabama getting the last one. That's his top 5. Should be an interesting one to track. Before we keep on going, let's go ahead and get our ad out of the way and throw it to LC. LC, take it away.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
Thank you, LC. Let's go to a little bit of wide receiver recruiting. You wrote the other day about tiers and where, a lot of top Texas targets at wide receiver for Chris Jackson kind of fall in a pecking order. And one of the top targets for Texas had a little bit of news pop up about him the other day, thanks to our friends over at Blue and Gold Illustrated. They put in a prediction for Caden Finley to end up eventually at Notre Dame. If you're a member at Inside Texas, you can read Blue and Gold Illustrated. It's part of an On3 network, so you can go see that. And Mike Singer, who put in the prediction, didn't think it was anything imminent. Justin, we kind of feel like this one has a long way to go, but I don't think there's any doubt that Texas and Notre Dame are the two teams battling at the top for Caden Finley.
Yeah, you said it. Notre Dame has made a strong impression on Finley, and understand this, like, Finley is a very important target for this Texas staff. Like, they expect Caden Finley to be in this cycle. I don't know if they thought they were going to have a fight on their hands like they do, and Notre Dame is pushing all the right buttons right now. Honestly, though, it's a little premature for a prediction. I felt like I think this kid has got a long way to go. You know, our Charlie Williams went to Alito, went to see Caden a few days ago, and there's no urgency there. There's no push to make a decision. Remember, his dad, you know, he played at Texas, obviously in the NFL. That's all known. He understands the recruiting process. He knows that they're not going to rush through any of this. The opportunities are going to be there. They're also very much, before Finley went to Notre Dame for his junior day, Chris Jackson and Tashard Choice did an in-home visit 2 days before. Absolutely loved it. Finley's loved it. Sources there tell me that they had a great time. And so it's just something to watch. You know, it's early February, and we're in the 2026 recruiting cycle. We're going to see stuff pop up here and there. Now, this is part of the year where kids' official visits are going to be set. Spring trips to Austin. We reported one of those earlier today. Anthony Davis Jr., linebacker out of Grayson, he's going to be at a spring practice in a couple months in Austin. So they're planning all this stuff. Finley is still going to take an official visit to Texas, and he is still going to go through the process, we feel like, before he makes any decision. And I think Texas is still the leader. Again, the Fighting Irish are fighting for this kid. They love him. They see a much more athletic version of Jaden Greathouse. I think that's a good comp. This kid's a ball player. And not to mention, his little brothers might be better athletes. So just go ahead and start the pipeline. Let's just make sure these kids are going to Austin, if at all possible, because they are tremendous athletes from one of the best. Yes, I got you, David Keith Williams. I think Texas is still the school there. And I say that because of what they did in the last 2 years, who the kid is, and the confidence they have. But, buddy, they've got a fight on their hands, and it's in South Bend.
And I think one of the things that your wide receiver tiers article really illustrated, and something that David Keith Williams is on, is that wide receiver is really strong nationally. And you have, you know, in your top tier, Finley is the only guy from Texas within that group. And that a little bit of that has to do with Texas' evaluation of Jalen Lott, seeing him probably as a corner. Also has to do with
Jermaine. We got Jermaine Bishop in the athlete tier because he's being recruited at receiver, but probably a corner.
And then London Smith, he was a corner recruit for Texas.
He wanted to play wide receiver. Texas only saw him as a safety, so he's going to stay home and go to Baylor.
So, but to that point, like Georgia kid. And you should go read this article on Inside Texas. Georgia kid, Mississippi kid, New Orleans kid, modern day kid. Like there's
two modern day kids.
right. And including maybe it's hard for me to say that there's another Jeremiah Smith, but maybe Chris Henry something.
And there is, and I did leave a caveat. If you're at Inside Texas, you got to read probably the best nugget of all when it came to the tiers of wide receivers. There's another wide receiver prospect that hypothetically could reclassify, and it could really change the dynamics of Texas in their tiers. Very, very important kid. And so be sure to check out IT for that, because that kid can change a lot of different steps like Crowell did with the running back room. This kid could do the same thing. There's a potential for that hypothetically. We'll have to wait and see.
Let's keep on going with a couple kids you talked about today. One of them is Anthony Davis. The other one you're going to write about probably as soon as this video is done. Right. So if you're listening or watching, it'll probably be on Inside Texas. When you go check it out, let's talk about linebacker Anthony Davis and then defensive lineman James Johnson.
So Anthony Davis Jr., this is of course, I'm having to deal with a kid named Anthony Davis at a time like this.
And we'll get to that later. We're
not getting to that at all.
Okay.
Okay. There's nothing to get to. We're not bringing that up. Anthony Davis Jr. This kid does not have a unibrow. He's also not 6'11", 260 pounds. But, buddy, Anthony Davis is good. He's 6'2", about 200 pounds, maybe 205 on a good day. They've got some incredible prospects at Grayson. I didn't get to check out Brunswick, but I did get to go through Loganville, and that's one of the kids I got to see. Look, they got two linebackers there that Texas really likes, Tyler Atkinson and Anthony Davis Jr. Just to sort of set the floor for you, Atkinson is not filling Texas, at least not right now. Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, LSU are kind of getting his attention. Oregon, USC kind of his attention. Just to understand kind of where they're at. Anthony Davis is very much filling Texas. Johnny Nansen actually had started that relationship back in October. I think it was maybe September, October of last year. And so Davis has since been on campus once. He's going to be back. We reported that this morning. He's coming in for a spring practice in a couple months. He's he's kind of got some Mo Blackwell to him. Just very rangy, twitchy kid that fills the alley, throws his body around, has no problem with contact, doesn't get caught in the wash. But this one's going to be a battle I think, of the SEC, essentially. I really do think Georgia's got a leg there, even though he has no problem leaving the state. Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn is making a big push. LSU is making a big push. Texas A&M is in the mix as well. And so there's some battling going on here. But at the end of the day, I think Texas is in a good position. I think they're getting him on campus in the spring. Everything goes well. I wouldn't be surprised to see him take an official visit in the fall. I think the number's probably 3 at linebacker this cycle, maybe 4 if they still don't add anyone else in 2025. And at this stage, we don't expect them to do that. And so it might be 4. And so that's a kid that you could pencil in an outside type role who could also play inside because he does have some cover skills. When I saw him, he was about 6'1", 190. He's since grown a little bit. So I saw kind of a big safety playing linebacker in high school. Now he's growing into his frame a little bit more, but he still has some of that safety ability. And I think that's important, especially in this day and age of offenses. And so Anthony Davis, big fan. James Johnson, this is a big boy that's kind of under the radar. And that surprises me when you come from a place like Florida, the state of Florida. But he's a guy that Texas went by there recently. Kenny Baker went to see him, and they clicked from day one. And the biggest takeaway from that was how much he loved Kenny Baker. He thought this is a guy he could play for. He envisions himself as being a player that's going to bring a certain amount of urgency to the position. He wants to play early as a freshman if possible. But this is a kid that's just a big defensive lineman. Texas is going to need to take 4 defensive linemen in this cycle. 3, I could see 3 easily. 4, if you can get the right guy, get the right floor. To me, Johnson might be a floor guy in this cycle. He might be one of your floor guys because I really like where they're at with Jamie and Winfield. If they continue to push with Tiki Hala, I like that too. But they're going to go out of state for at least 2 other defensive linemen. That's like wide receiver. If we did tiers, which we'll probably do, I'll probably do a tier story on the D line just to kind of sort everything out for everybody. But I think Johnson would be near the top of the second tier. I think he's a guy that's got a lot of potential. Hey, I like him because he looks great already. He doesn't have a lot of bad weight. He's not skinny, but he's not fat. Like, he is just a big, strong kid. And I think that's something that's that moldable clay that Torrey Beckton loves and can handle. And so just 2 guys from out of state that Texas, they went all up and down the East Coast last week. And this was one of the guys that Kenny Baker found. Big fan. Georgia is probably the quiet leader in this recruitment. That they've already identified him. They love him. They've been building around him. But like we've seen in the last cycle, Texas has no problem going to battle for anybody in any state for any position. And in this cycle, they're going to do particularly that.
Should be a lot of fun to track that. I mean, it's just so interesting going just California and then, sprinkling in it. We haven't really seen Texas dip off the I-10 to I-20 corridor all that much, if you think of it. Because I-20, it ends in West Texas. So I-10 goes all the way out to Santa Monica Pier.
Yeah.
Goes through Phoenix, goes through New Mexico, all the way around, and then you get I-20. Excuse me. And that goes through the South, goes through Georgia, goes through Florida. It's kind of funny. I guess if they really wanted to, they could stay all the way on top of those two interstates. And you see, and of course, that's where so many of these guys' connections are too, especially someone like Kenny Baker. And then you even add Sark just from his experience in the Southeast, and Jeff Banks with his experience of the Southeast as well. So it makes sense that these guys look there, especially now that, hey, maybe this isn't the strongest of classes in state at some certain positions.
Right. And listen, we wrote about this. You wrote about something about it yesterday. We pretty much confirmed it on Sunday. With Tashard Choice coming back, I can't tell you how strong that does for this cycle. And it's not just running backs. I think everyone has this idea that the running back coach only recruits running backs. Yes, they do recruit running backs. That's part of the job. You take 2 a year. They've got a lot more on their plate, other things to do. Choice is one of those lead recruiters too. He's a guy that can go offer a kid sight unseen. And I think catching up with a couple guys like a Javian Osborne and KJ Edwards, top running back targets. They're excited that Choice is back. I think this is huge. I could go this far as to say this running back haul could have gone off kind of like how D-line did a year ago when Bo Davis left. Like, it would have left a gap of trying to catch up relationships, not only with 26s, but with a lot of these 27s, including guys like Landon Williams-Callis and Jacoby Dixon out of Brenham. So I think it's huge that you've got Tashard Choice coming back, turning down the Cowboys job. And like you said, him and Kenny Baker have made Georgia kind of a new place. Like, we've talked about how they want to build pipelines within these big programs. In Georgia, you've got Buford, and you've got Douglas County, and you've got Grayson. You've got all these like major places. Marietta, you got all these spots. Warner Gibbons, all these places. Warner Robins, rather. Like, Texas is going to, and Georgia is loaded with talent again. They're there to get. And so go to Florida, go to Georgia, hit Tennessee, hit Mississippi, hit Alabama. They hit all their keys in all those spots. Heck, what's his face? Kyle Flood was up in New Jersey last week.
Okay, they do go off the corridor.
They do. We were up there watching Luke Wafel play basketball. That's an edge guy that Texas is getting close to from a Hun school up in Princeton, New Jersey. He's getting closer to Texas. I wouldn't be surprised if he's on campus this spring. Unbelievable basketball player, and you know how I feel about how that stuff translates. But yeah, you're right. They're going. They're traveling. They're hitting their spots, and that's what they're supposed to do. Personally, I think Johnny Nanson's been living in California for the last 3 weeks. Like, that guy has gone to the north tip from the south tip. He's everywhere. I love that new defensive lineman that they offered a couple of days ago. I can't pronounce his name, and I'm not going to butcher that thing, but he is a giant Samoan defensive tackle that looks like he eats offensive linemen for breakfast. You're right, Joe. They're going all over the place. They're going to nail down your guys in state. You got to keep your boys home. But then they're going to go out of state just like they did in the last cycle, and that's a key when you want to sign the number one class.
We'll get to a couple questions. Unusual suspect. I love that name. Will we take running backs 4 in 2026? You'll be hard pressed to get 3.
3's not happening,
and you're not going to get 4 because you may want to add 4, but there's only so much room, and not just saying about the 85 or the 105. Like, guys do want to play, and you look around and be like, crud, like when am I going to get snaps? You're not going to get like 4 top 200 guys to commit.
You're not. But unusual suspect, granted, great name. You could make a case for 3. Like, right. If we were told, hey,
with the depth chart problem too,
we would say, hey, that makes sense. You just lost 2 within a week last year. You had to bring Belton Gardner off of the portal assembly line rather. And so 3 would make sense, but the 4, they've got 4 guys they love. KJ Edwards, Javian Osborne, Amari Latimer, and Xavier Crowell. 2 of those 4 are your likely guys. Would those 4 join in some Avengers type situation? No, they wouldn't. Would 3 of them join and maybe a Three's Company, spinoff? No, they wouldn't. But 2 of them will. They want a big boy. They want a little boy. They want a scat one. They want somebody that can go. They want somebody to go between the tackles. I'm thinking 2 is going to continue to be the number. And until we tell you, 2 is probably going to be the number every cycle. If you look at Tashard Choice's track record, it's been 2 every year.
It's also just one of those things where you just don't have room. That's not good roster construction, to dedicate
way too much
running back
spot. Yeah.
We got to go with one.
Sign if they were high end 4 running backs on the payroll, because guys, you got to start considering the payroll now.
Yeah, we'll go to this one from David Keith Williams. Been bringing it. This could be the best wide receiver class for Texas since 2000. If Texas were to get Keys, Dixon Wyatt, Finley, and Feaster. Feaster hadn't reclassified as of yet.
That's hypothetical, David.
It's hypothetical. Yeah. What are the chances you think Texas could pull that foursome? Again, in the hypothetical, look, let's think about this past cycle where everybody was pounding the Jamie French, Khalid Lockett, DeCorian Moore drum to get those 3.
Yeah.
They got 2 of the 3, but getting all 3 was going to be tough. And granted, they made up for it. And it's so weird to even say made up for it with Dalen McCutcheon, who's a top 250 guy. And then you also add an offensive weapon in Michael Terry as well. So if they couldn't even get those 3, it makes me wonder if that's possible to get those 4, especially now that most of the current depth chart and snaps are going to go to younger players, guys that the 4 that you mentioned would ostensibly be behind if they arrived on campus. And you have some guys like DeAndre Moore wait their turn and be content with special teams, but those are the type of guys who could go play pretty quickly at a lot of places. And I doubt they're going to be extremely content to sit around. And hey, that's why we love going to your questions. They're a lot of fun.
But I think he can do better. David, I really do. I believe in you. Even if your name's backwards on this thing, I believe in you. Because your name is Williams David. I don't care what nobody says. Let's have fun with this fantasy, okay? First off, that English Bulldog just opened and closed the door by himself.
Well, at least he had the courtesy to close it.
Good Lord. Don't ever teach your dog how to open doors. Good Lord. Now they'll just go everywhere. This fantasy of 2026 wide receivers, let's have fun with it, okay? It all starts with Chris Henry Jr. Everything we ever talk about with 2026 and wide receivers, if we're talking fantasy, if we're talking hypotheticals, Chris Henry Jr., that's where it starts. You're talking about a 16-year-old kid that could start at most major Division I, P4 schools right now, today. Okay, so that's where it starts. Is he solid to Ohio State? Absolutely. But Texas is going to shoot their shot at some point with the best wide receiver prospect in high school I've ever seen doing this job. He's unreal. Okay, that's where we start. Tristan Keys is next. Freaky athlete, super freaky athlete, Nicki Minaj level athlete. Like this dude, twitchy, just goes raw. You get this guy some technical skills, and this kid's going to be incredible. Tristan Keys is in that conversation. Caden Finley, Texas got to have in this class. And hypothetically, Booby Feaster, you get him in this cycle, I mean, that would make the Roy B.J. Sloan class look silly. That's how insane that would be, because I think Feaster is going to be rated at near in the top if he does go through and reclassify. And so that's my dream scenario. If you want to be at your ideal class, David, if that's what you're looking for, let's have some fun with it. Let's get real with it. That would be – I wouldn't have Caden Dixon Wyatt in my ideal class. Good kid, good receiver. I think Texas sees a few other guys. They're prioritizing a few other guys. But that would be that. If I would add – Chris Henry Jr. is probably the only one I would add. If I'm allowed to add one more, Aaron Gregory – my goodness, Aaron Gregory could be in the conversation for one of the top 3 or 4 receivers in the country. He just looks like he's long, almost like a gazelle. Like he runs. That guy can go. And so – that's my best wide receiver haul for since 2000, if possible. In the NIL era, it's going to be tricky to see how that flows, though.
And we know our guy is going to call him Ethan, not the other name.
I'm calling him Ethan because his mama calls him Ethan.
One more thing to get out of here on. We got to reference our guy, Coach Williams. He's out hitting schools. I think he's about to be at somewhere in the DFW area today. but he wrote a little bit about 2027 quarterback Colton Nussmeier. Should be a familiar name for a lot of people. Doug Nussmeier, Philadelphia Eagles quarterback coach, former Dallas Cowboys assistant. That's his son, and obviously the little brother of Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback who sat behind Jaden Daniels and enjoyed a pretty solid. I see that, David Williams enjoyed a pretty solid year at LSU. Colton's next up, and Texas is talking to him. He's gotten big offers from schools like Alabama and a bunch of others. So far, Texas, I think, only has 2 quarterback offers out. One went to Brady Edmonds from Huntington Beach, who visited and interacted with Texas plenty, committed to Ohio State. Yeah. The other is to Peyton Houston, who's at Evangel Christian in Louisiana, just visited Texas.
Yes.
And we know that with quarterbacks, the process has moved up. These are 2027s. These are guys who are going to be juniors in the fall, but they want to commit. Dia Bell did it, in June of last year. KJ Lacey, I think, did it in June of his cycle. So all these guys move up. That means it's time for AJ Milwee, Steve Sarkisian, all that crew to start evaluating. And maybe Colton Nussmeier, Justin, is one of the next guys they really evaluate and hand out one of their selective offers to.
Going through Brady Edmonds tape and Peyton Houston tape, it's obvious why Sark would offer them. They camped last June, and you talk to the players. They were 2 of the best quarterbacks out there. That was obvious. Colton Nussmeier is a kid that you just sort of were waiting to see when Texas would reach out because he is big. He's bigger than Garrett. This kid is 6'4", 180 pounds, slings that ball from the left side like Boomer Esiason. And he's got an arm, and he moves around. He goes off platform. He does it in pocket. He's the typical, if your dad was a major professional quarterback coach, you would have those tools. Also, I think he's athletic. This kid puts about 15 a game on the floor in basketball. Like that, to me, really, really caught my attention. And so that's something we're watching, something that Charlie talked about earlier with Colton. He's a kid that, Peyton Houston was on campus 2 weeks ago. He loves Texas. But that offer it's rare, and so Texas is involved with Colton. They like what they see there. He definitely has the tools. It'd be interesting because it felt like each year Texas goes out of state. If you look on their current roster, there's 1 Texas high school football quarterback, and so or 2 now. They're now still just one with Trey, and so who's wearing number 3 now? Trey Owens got his number 3 back from his high school days, so I know he's excited about that. But yeah, Nussmeier's a kid that can sling it. Just that's a dude to watch. Sark's not going to offer very many quarterbacks. That's why when they do contact these kids, we pretty much go see them immediately. Gunnar Rivers is one that you need to remember his name as well. That's a really talented kid in the same cycle out of Alabama, and Milwee is in love with that kid as well.
Is he the oldest?
I don't know, because, that's a real-life Brady bunch. Didn't he have like 10 kids? He's got as many kids as Antonio Cromartie.
I think it's got to be his oldest.
It's all with the same. It's all under the same house.
I think that has to be the oldest.
You would think.
Because if he's, 16-ish, that means Philip had him when he was 27. Let me see. He's got to. And also, remember, Philip Rivers, I think, is his head coach. Because Philip Rivers is coaching in Alabama, I believe.
I think so. I don't know for sure. But I think so.
St. Michael Catholic, which makes a lot of sense. If in Fairhope, Alabama. Yeah, okay. Then that's probably that's his dad. He's got Philip as coach. And I think we've written about this. I know I have written about this. The fact that Philip, or not just Philip Rivers, multiple NFL families, not just the Mannings, but multiple NFL families give Steve Sarkisian that seal of approval. You go to Santana Wilson, his dad, I know had off-field. I think there was some recent off-field issues, but he was an NFL player, and he said, "I want my son in that program." Lance St. Louis, I know this one kind of goes under the radar. But he was his uncle, I think, is the GM of the LA Rams. Okay. That one's pretty obvious about, some seal of approval.
Finding Jordan Whittington.
You got the Mannings, obviously Whittington. There's one more.
I'll give you one more, but it's not football. I'll give you a basketball seal of approval. Rajabell, the former NBA veteran, son Diabell, they gave him the seal of approval.
Even this one's a little different, but like Brooks Kieschnick, his son, and granted, he's a legacy. I found the article I wrote. You've got Lance St. Louis. At the time, you had Chet Brooks and his son Terrence.
That was a killer for the 49ers. Woo!
And then even going further than that, Cole Hudson's dad played college baseball.
Played pro baseball for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Colton Vosick's dad played for Texas. Like, there's a lot of families from not just athletes, but professional athletic families and NFL families who have given a stamp of approval to Texas. And I wonder if Rivers went to NC State, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He was there. I think it was Chuck Amato was the coach at the time, and I think he was maybe the OC at Florida State with Bobby Bowden, and that's how that sort of transpired, I believe. He used that success as a play caller to take that job. Hey, I remember Phillip Rivers. I remember watching that dude chunk it on Saturdays, and you always made fun of his mechanics. Have you seen Gunner? He does not throw like that. Gunner comes over the top. There's no sidearm style. He's not going 90 degrees. He's coming over the top, hard and heavy. And so I'm interested. I'm curious. I mean, because it's well known, Phillip Rivers has like a dozen kids. And so he may have enough for a starting lineup. If he can get 11 on the field at the same time, that's just good parenting.
Should be interesting. Quarterback recruiting is always one of the most fun things to track. And I know it may be tough when you look up at 2027, which means – sorry, Justin, but Sam Ehlinger was 10 years ago. When you look up at that and see at 2027, you may be turned off by it. But quarterback recruiting with Texas is so much fun to track just because
they're going to be good.
They're going to be good. The schools that they're competing against, the offenses that they're competing against are always some of the top tiers. And it all typically plays out across this spring and ends in the summer. So it's really fun to watch, and can't wait to track it. So great show, Justin. Glad we got that all knocked out.
Unusual Suspect said something. I like this. Trey is going to learn a lot from Arch. That's Arch Manning. That's Archibald Manning. Arch Manning. That's who that is. He is the new starting quarterback for the Texas Longhorns. He's also the new face of Red Bull in some regards. It gives you wings. Red Bull, take it in. But Trey he's wearing number 3 now, and he is going to learn a lot from the starting quarterback, Arch Manning. That is right. That's the man, Arch Manning, Archibald Manning.
Arch Manning. There we go. Had to hit all the mentions.
There we go. We got to get to the algorithm, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank everybody for watching. We'll have Coach Williams back with us next week, and he's going to have some great recruiting reports from the road and the Metroplex. You'll have some this week as well, I believe, Justin.
I'll be on the road tomorrow, and it'll be a secret till I get there.
Should be a lot of fun. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And, of course, head to InsideTexas.com. There is no off season. We got a lot of great team info from Eric Naline. Recruiting is always ongoing. And some other sports are starting to pick up the pace a little bit, so it's a lot of fun. So, all right. I won't do it to you, but at some point, somebody's going to ask you about the trade. We'll get to it sometime else, but until next, maybe that's a cliffhanger. Keep people coming back to the channel. I'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.